What's going on, guys? We are back and we are talking about the North American teams who can possibly qualify to the London Major. And wait, hold on. Wait, we're not in my fancy house. Hold on. There we go. All right, now we're in my fancy house. So we're going to do projections, not necessarily every single scenario. It's more of the realistic ones because a lot of times with these playoff implications, you can be like, well, they really only need a ninth, but that's only if every other team bombs out and doesn't even get a point, which is unrealistic. So we're just going to go into it and we're going to project based on a top 8 for the 4th place team. The reason for this is because, well, now there's 2 4th place teams, and we'll get into that. So let me just bring it up. And here's what we got. It's not too difficult to understand, but basically our current points right now, G2's at 36, Gen G 28, Space Station 28. Those 3 teams very likely in. G2 literally needs 1 point to get in, I believe it was. And then Gen G, Space Station, obviously, they're going to pick up some points, right? So it's very unlikely, unless they miss the event. Then we'll talk about that later. But very likely they will get in. But even if they miss the event, they'll still get 1 point at least, I believe it is. Let me check. Yeah, 1 point. Yeah, 1 point. Which will probably end a lot of tiebreakers and things like that. But for now, let's pretend that those 3 teams have clinched, right? Then you have Cloud9 and OG. They are tied at 20 points each. The reason why this is bad for basically all of NA that is trying to catch up is because you can hope that one of these teams bombs out early, right? But it's very unlikely that both bomb out early. And that's going to make it a little more difficult. Like, at best, I could see both of them finish in 9th. Where the top finishes 9th. Because if one of the teams goes further, then you're going to be running into problems. After that, you go down the line. I went all the way down to Dignitas at rank 14 to kind of just show you what these teams need. We're talking about projections. So right now we have Cloud9 and OG. I'm just going to project them as a top 8 finish. That would be 28 points. As you can see on the side over here, a 5th place would get you 8 points. And you can't see my mouse, but I can highlight. So that would get you 8 points there. That is probably where these teams are expected to fall. Obviously, they can get higher. But for now, let's pretend that Cloud9 OG, for the teams below them, at best, they get a top 8. And if they get a top 8, one of these teams, it doesn't have to be both, will be at 28 points. So what does that mean for everyone else? What do they need to do? What's a realistic chance that they make it to London? And that is to either match 28 or beat it. So let's get into it. Snowmen, they would need a top 4. That would be 12 points right there. That's 3rd and 4th. I should have probably named them the same, but that's okay. So that would get you 30 points. So you'd be looking pretty solid there. Even if these guys drop down 1, so say these guys were 9th, really quick, that'd be 2 less points. 26 points. That does help in some of these. Like the Snowmen would then only need a top 8 finish to tie them. So just keep that in mind, and I'll mention those here or there. Top 4 tied would be M80 Rebellion. So if they got a top 4, they would tie at 28 points. They would still need a top 4 if one of these teams, the max they got was a 9th place finish. So realistically, no matter what, they need a top 4, and they'll need some help. But the thing is, very likely, like if one of these teams pulls one of these off, a top 4, very likely the Cloud9 and the OGs of the world are not going to get a top 4 as well, right? Because you would expect most of the other spots are going to be those 3 teams. It's not necessarily true, but it does increase your odds, right? Of if you place high, someone else has to place lower. And so Cloud9 OG very likely wouldn't get a top 4 at that point. So top 4 tied for Rebellion and M80. That would force a tiebreaker at the very least if, again, max is top 8. But they would still need a top 4 if the max was a 9th place finish, which is like, that's the lowest I would go here, right? Is probably a 9th place finish. So no matter what, M80 and Rebellion, top 4 at the bare minimum. Luminosity, TSM, they need a top 2, and they would tie. As you can see here, 16 points for that. Unfortunately for them, also would need a top 2 finish, a grand finals appearance to beat them if their max was ninth place. So Luminosity and TSM, they really need to push it. Obviously, Luminosity, they do have a grand finals appearance. TSM has had a top 4 appearance. It's possible, but, that's what they need there. After that, you just need to win the event. Energy, if you win, you would be at 31 points. That is what they would need if they finish in the grand finals. Then if these guys were in ninth place, they would pass them. Moist and Nether need to win the event as well. If they finish in the grand finals, they would tie them if these guys finished ninth. And then finally, Dignitas as well. They would need to win the event, and they would beat these guys by 1 single point. So no matter what, they would have to win the event because the projected top 8, like if they got to a ninth place finish, it would only drop them 2 points. That would put these guys at 26. Dignitas would be at 25 if they made a grand finals run. So realistically, we already know our teams. We know 3 of the teams, G2, Gen G, and Space Station. The 4th spot's open, but really it's only open for probably 2 teams, Cloud9 OG, maybe a Snowman, I guess, but very unlikely. Like, unless M80 finally figures it out. Like, I think M80's probably your one outside shot. If they figure it out in playoffs, they've shown that they can literally beat anyone. So maybe they go on that run. But I would say, realistically, it's going to be either Cloud9 OG or I would say probably M80. That would be my guess. That's only if M80 finally figures something out. But because of that OG win, that makes things a lot harder for all these teams. And as you can see here, these teams need a lot of help. Top 4, bare minimum for like any of these teams, really. Snowman's the only team that can get away with a quarterfinal exit if they get help. And Cloud9 and OG finished 9th place. So that is what is on the line in North America. OG, huge win versus Gen G that really kept them in the race here. It really comes down to that Swiss. Does at least one of Cloud9 OG advance out of it? I would say that is probably like 80% likely because you just need one of them. Both those teams I expect in like that 2-2 round. Maybe 2-1 for OG or 3-1, I should say. For an OG. Cloud9 obviously looked fantastic this entire weekend. Maybe they have found that form. I feel like normally teams kind of fall back down a little bit. So I always say do it twice, right? And in North America, we've seen this a lot. It's very rare that a new team does it twice in a row. I think Winter Split Dignitas was one of the few that actually had some good results. So we'll see how it goes. But as of right now, it's looking dire, especially down here. Dignitas, Nether, Moist. And obviously, if you don't make the major, you are out of the World Championship race completely for most of these teams. The only one that is available is OG and LG. Right now, they could have the 4th spot. Like, if Space Station makes it, they're going to pass them. Very, very likely. So the 4th spot would be held by LG or OG. So if you're a fan of LG and OG and you don't make the major, you want a team like Cloud9 to go because they don't have as many total points in the year. And then Cloud9 would have to do better at London to possibly qualify for that World Championship. Right now, let me look real quick. I don't have it up on the screen, but the rankings in North America as a whole for the World Championship. I'll bring that up here real quick. Right now, Space Station has taken over 4th place already from LG. They're 1 point behind OG. So if Space Station makes major and OG doesn't, then it's already, kind of over there. Because the points you get at the major are 5 points for last, 7, 10, 16, 24, 32, and 40. It's very likely, like, a team that makes it out of NA, you're getting at least 7 points. You're at least probably getting at least 1 win. So we'll just base it off of that, like if they have a terrible performance. But Space Station then obviously would be in 3rd, no problem there. If Cloud9 advances, now here's where it gets a little sketchy, I guess I would say. Right now, Cloud9 is 12 points behind Luminosity. They are also, what is it? Math. 15 points behind OG. So, if they did make the major and say they got the same amount of points as them in this last event, obviously that would mean a tiebreaker with OG. They would need a lot of points. So, again, 12 and 15 to catch up. So, Luminosity, they're not only fighting for their major, they're also fighting to just place better than OG in this event and get 4 points up on them and knock them out of the major, and then they will have that 4th spot. So that's what Luminosity is also fighting for. So even if they don't make it, if they get 4 points more than OG, they're looking in a good spot to make the World Championship. Again, say that happened, Cloud9 would need 16 points. Like if they don't acquire any more here, like over a Luminosity, and that would mean a top 8 finish at London to tie them for the World Championship spot. So we'll see how it all plays out. There's a lot of numbers going around. For the most part, all you have to worry about for right now is what's on your screen here is for who makes it to London. Once we know who's in London, I'll let you know the playoff implications or the World Championship implications for that. Obviously, there's also the K-Corp stuff. Like K-Corp needs a lot of help, but we'll probably talk about that next week after Europe is done. But this is what North America needs. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.